Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to bring you my wrap up for the month of March. I can't believe March is over, but yeah, I can. It kind of just marched in and marched out. I got that on Twitter. I didn't come up with that, but I thought it was so true. But I'm excited to share a lot of these books with you guys because this month I may not have read that many books. There probably weren't a lot in quantity, but there were a lot in quality. So I feel like pretty much almost every book I'm talking about is A1. Let's start off with my first book, my favorite book. I'm not saving the best for last, and that's okay. This I gave 5 stars. This is The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. And if you follow me on any social media platform, whether it be Instagram or on Twitter, you will see that I raved about this. I would have the back of the book showing. The book is told from the perspective of Jack, who is the main character. He's a teen and he has like these 2 best friends and he meets this girl and you're following him on his journey of him trying to save this girl. This is not a spoiler, even on the back or on the inside the sleeve. It lets you know that this girl dies and basically he can time travel and he is trying to figure out how he can save her. So you're going through all these different iterations of him trying to save her while also saving his friends. And I feel like this story, it's clearly depicting a Latino boy, a biracial girl, a Black young man, but it's also picturing the joy and the fun in that life. Like it's a good balance and it's just brilliantly done. Like I was cheesing nonstop while reading this and I am rambling way too long about this. I probably should have just did a separate review, but just know that I loved this book. Okay. Okay, so next up I'm talking about Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This was actually the first book that I finished in the month of March because I was reading it in February. Um, but I am so excited that I finally read this and completed this. This book was amazing. This is my other 5-star. These were the only 2 5-stars that I had this month, but I cannot rave about this enough. This is definitely more on the serious side. For those of you who do not know Bryan Stevenson, he is a lawyer. You probably have heard Oprah talk about him. Last year I read the book The Sun Does Shine, which that Anthony Ray Hinton, he was actually represented by Bryan Stevenson. Bryan Stevenson, I don't know how to describe him. Like I don't know him clearly, but he's just a beautiful person and he inspires you to want to figure out what you can do to just make this world a little bit better. Basically, this book depicts his story, like his life story, but more importantly, from his point of view, the story of the system, the prison system in America and the justice system in America, and how essentially like our system is broken and your fight. And he basically represents clients that are on death row, and he talks about his journeys on trying to make sure that kids are not sentenced to death for crimes that they commit when they're kids, or that they're not death row or these long life imprisonment sentences, and how he was able to help reform that, and how all the work that he's still continuously doing for those inmates who are wrongfully convicted, as well as those who may have done the crime, but the punishment does not fit the crime. And it is just a heart-wrenching but heart-gripping story of these true cases that he has worked on, as well as his experience in the justice system. I feel like this is a must-read, and anybody who I feel with any decency who has any type of open-mindedness, even if they are for the death penalty or anything of that, maybe after reading this, I feel like this book would challenge that thought. Next up, I read Binti, and you guys know I have been trying to finish this trilogy for the longest, and every time I say I'm going to finish it, I haven't. Well, I finished the first 2 stories, so backtrack. I loved it so much that I said, I'm purchasing the whole trilogy, so that's actually why I didn't get through everything. I actually finished so with the trilogy, it has all 3 of the original Binti, and then it has Binti Home and Binti the Night Masquerade, which is really exciting. I'm so excited to finish the last 2 in the trilogy, which is interesting because Binti's Sacred Fire is kind of like a interim between that was just added in between Binti and Binti Home. And I love how this is just a brilliant story. So I know I've only read the first two, but this is science fiction at its best. It's literally taking real African stories as far as representing the Himba culture. And for those of who are not familiar with the Himba culture, I would say possibly do a little bit research before, because when you're reading it, it makes it that much more beautiful. Like when she's describing all of her rituals, her love of nature, her love of the sun, her love of the earth, and is bringing beauty to people who already exist. It's not like necessarily imagining this complete new society, these complete new people that so happen to be Black. No, these are Black characters and Black cultures that currently exist, and it's painting a different narrative of that story, which I love. So I'm so excited, especially now that I have my hands on this newly released complete trilogy. Oh, y'all know. Okay, so Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This was actually a reread for me. This is my third time reading this, technically. Well, it's my second time finishing it. When I was young, I tried to read this in elementary school and I didn't understand it, so I was like, no. But growing up in Florida, specifically Orlando, in Eatonville, we would go to the Zora Neale Hurston Festival annually. You learn so much about her as a young person, and it's just one of those people where if you know there's a classic, you want to read this novel, you want to read this book. So I gave it another shot again, and when I was in my teenage years, and I finished it, but I was kind of like, what in the world? How is this a classic? Like, I didn't connect with the story. But then, the movie had came out, and I was like, I get it, and I love it. And it was like, it came to life to me. So for the past year, being that I read 2 of Zora Neale Hurston's nonfiction, and I gave the author another chance, because honestly, Their Eyes Were Watching God, that was all that I ever read from Zora Neale Hurston. I had never read none of her nonfiction, none of her other fiction. That's it. So I was just kind of like, not my cup of tea. But then when I read her nonfiction, I loved it. I was like, this is nonfiction at its best, where I can hear, like, I feel like it was just so authentic, where she doesn't alter the stories, So I wanted to reread this, and I did this month, and I gave it 3 stars. It is a good story. I feel like, of course, I understand the themes. I get the themes. I think it's important. It shows so much of like women and the viewpoint and the judgment that's attached to women for various different reasons. There's a lot of themes in this that were enjoyable and that were interesting, and I loved reading it for the conversation that was happening, because you could almost picture it, even with the gossiping, especially in the beginning. You could almost hear the different people gossiping and conspiring on what really happened to her. I just feel that I love her nonfiction so much. I wanted to love her fiction as much. Okay, guys, so that was a lot of yapping for not that many books. But I hope you guys had a great month in reading. I don't really have anything else to say. I'm going to just leave it there. Love and light, and God bless. Bye.